Well, hey everyone, welcome to another Facebook Live interview with MS Insight on Facebook Live. I'm your host, Erica Anderson, and I'm excited today to be talking with our guest, Patrycia Rzechowka.
Yeah.
Did I get it?
hmm
Okay. She's a tough last name, but I was practicing before we started, and so somehow I managed to get it. But Patrycia, thank you so much for joining us today. We are excited to hear about your story and a lot of things to run down, including the documentary that you've been a part of, the bike ride, and all the advocacy work you're doing within the MS community. Could you just get us started by just telling us a little bit about yourself, where you live, and just help us get to know you a little bit?
Sure. I'm laughing. I'm like 31, 31.
Once you
31
hit
years
your
old.
30s,
Yeah.
you just forget.
Yeah. I live in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada. I work for the government of Alberta in the Justice Ministry under the Public Security Division. So I have a criminology degree, and I was diagnosed with MS in 2013. So that's kind of where the MS part of my life story began. But I always like to remind myself, even that's not all I do. So I mean, my job is really important to me. It's a lot to do with making a difference and helping people, and so I think that's a lot of what I do in my volunteer work as well. So it all just kind of fits together that way. And other than that, yeah, like I love cycling and spin class and just being active, hiking, playing soccer, running. Pretty much, I'll try anything at least once,
Hmm.
but I like changing it up. I like doing new things. So yeah, so there's that. I am a huge advocate for rescue animals. So
Oh,
I have a rescue dog that my parents have essentially stolen from me. But yeah, just that's one of my passions as well. I used to train dogs when I was in university. So yeah.
were you always active even before the MS diagnosis?
Yeah, I would say I was. It's just I wasn't necessarily consistent about it. It was just sort of like definitely tried to be for the most part, like especially in university. Like I think for it kind of came in waves. Like I would be really into it for a little while, and then get busy and something would happen, and yeah, so it just wasn't super consistent. But it was about the same. Like I did enjoy trying new things and doing all the different sports. It was mostly just running, and I was doing actually Muay Thai kickboxing for many
Oh,
years as well. So yeah.
that's awesome. Well, we love to hear from people who are, still staying really active within the disease. Actually, our founder, Wendy Booker, that's one of her really big things. Like after her diagnosis 22 years ago, she was like, you know what? I think I'm going to climb some mountains and run some
Yeah.
marathons. And she became more active than she ever was. And something I've learned that you probably know just is that it used to be, those with MS were used to be told, don't be
Yeah.
active and don't move your
Yeah.
body. And it's been a relatively recent thing that, activity is actually now, recommended, and people are doing it a lot more, and it's really helpful to their bodies. So a lot of our audience are people with new diagnoses. So we always like to ask people, what was it like? What were some of the symptoms you were feeling that led you to the doctor to sort of get checked out?
So it's funny because I also have an autoimmune thyroid problem, and so a lot when I look back, I feel was blamed on that, just
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
there wasn't really any reason to try and explore certain symptoms further. But the one that really kind of made it like pretty clear that it wasn't my thyroid was I actually went blind in my left eye.
Mm.
So I had an experience a year or two before that where it went sort of blurry, and it fixed itself before I could even really get to the bottom of it. And the doctors were just sort of like, okay, like let us know if it happens again. And so yeah, so then when it started happening again, I thought it was just gonna be blurry, and something similar would happen, and it just actually kept getting worse and worse until like my left eye was just even unresponsive to light. And that lasted, um, it took about 5 months to actually get my full vision back, which at the time when they were trying to do the diagnosis, they said, if it didn't come back within 6 months, it would probably stay blurry. So there was a lot of that was sort of came with some fear of, at first not knowing what was causing it, and then,
Mhm.
waiting for the diagnosis, and then sort of trying to figure out what it means after that. And so that was an interesting thing. And so that was 2012. And you're saying that, for the longest time, exercise wasn't recommended. My first neurologist was like, tone down the high impact.
Mm.
Probably, yeah, don't quite exercise to the same level, things like that. And for me, that was like, okay, well, what can I do that's low impact? And that's what led me to yoga and cycling. And then that is actually what led me to participating in the MS bike tour, because I was like, well, cycling's low impact. Cycling, the bike tour is a way that I can sort of feel like I'm doing something about my diagnosis. So that was a big push of why I kind of tried to stay active. And what it became for me was I just started pushing those limits of being active, and so I didn't feel worse. And
Mm.
and that's just kind of where I kept going with it. And over the years, just being involved with the MS Society, and getting to know people in the research community, and having conversations about what I think might be a priority for people living with MS. There has been research that has come out around exercise and MS. And so it's just sort of, it started as like again, trying to feel like I'm not doing, or I'm doing nothing, right? To using this as a way to actually manage my symptoms.
So when you first heard them say it was MS, like, did you know anything about it at the time?
So that's actually one of my most favorite stories. So I didn't know too much about it. I have an aunt that married into the family, so not related to me necessarily, that had MS. She passed away not too long ago, actually, and that was sort of my first sort of main experience. But then the other experience that I had was when I was young. I had a neighbor that had MS, and I didn't really know too much about it. I was little, but one thing I do really remember is noticing that she would go for a walk every day. Didn't matter,
Mm.
what it looked like outside. Sometimes she would walk totally normally. Other times she'd be a little bit slower, and then sometimes she walked with a cane. And so I was always just sort of like, mom, dad, like, why? Like, did she break her leg? Like, and
Mhm.
they would say, oh, like she has MS. And when you're little, you're just kind of like, okay, well, don't
Whatever
really know
that
what that
is.
means. Yeah. But yeah, and so that really stuck with me now, looking back on that, and then thinking about sort of the beginnings of my journey. I now look at that as like, that's what she did to fight back against MS. She went for
Mhm.
her walk every day. And I know, um even like as time went on, like she got a treadmill, and she'd walk inside, like when she couldn't walk outside. And so that's actually just been an interesting driving force for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I really didn't know much. I had heard about the MS bike tour. That was sort of like another sort of big thing that sort of stuck. And yeah, like, other than that, it was just sort of you hear that, and you're sort of like, well, a lot of it was just, okay, now what? Like,
Right, right.
yeah,
Well, I want to talk about the documentary, but I did watch it actually,
yeah,
and what I notice is the people that know you in the documentary were saying like, "Oh, she just goes for it. Like she's always on the go. She's doing something. She's very proactive." And you're saying that same thing as you were like, "I'm not going to sit here and just be like, let this happen to me. I'm going
yeah.
to do something about it." So, I guess the question is just, where does that attitude come from for you? How do you have that sort of courageous spirit to just like say, I'm going to fight back, or I'm going to take this on, and it's not going to, hold me down?
You know what the interesting thing about that is, and I kind of have been trying to figure that out because a lot of people ask me that, and I'm just sort of like, I'm not quite sure. But I think a lot of it is just, and as harsh as this might sound, um, no one else is gonna do it for me.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
and for the longest time, I even, like I've always been a person that, if when I had a job, even when I was younger, and there's lots of people that were like, oh, I'm just gonna call in sick, or I'm gonna do this. Like for me, it was always just sort of like well, like, if I don't go in, then they're gonna have to phone someone, and they're gonna have to find someone, and it's gonna inconvenience someone else. So I'll just suck it up and I'll just go. And so, but the thing was for me, when I got really sick and I couldn't be there, they figured it out. Like I wasn't the thing that was holding everything together, right? Like in my
Right.
mind, I was like, oh, like if I, I can't inconvenience other people. And it was sort of like one of those moments where it's like, yeah, you know what? The world didn't fall apart without me. And it's no one, other than obviously like my mom, because my mom would do anything for me. But for the most part, it's my own responsibility to take ownership of my own life. And like when I'm struggling, like I can give up and sit at home and feel sorry for myself, but the only person that hurts is me, right? Like
Mhm.
there's a certain amount of people that obviously will care and try and help, but in the long run, like they can't do anything for me, right? And so I think that was a big part of it, is just like, if I want to live a certain life, then I have to just do it, even when I'm super tired, or even
Mhm.
when I'm flaring up. Like there's ways that I manage it. And so like one of my greatest examples is, like everything happened right now, and we all had to kind of shift and adjust. And like I have things that I can exercise at home. And do I enjoy exercising at home? Like absolutely not. It is not my favorite thing by any stretch of the imagination, because there's, and I hear it all the time. People are like, oh, I just hate working out at home. And for me, it was just like, well, I don't have a choice. This is just how I manage my symptoms. And so I think
Mhm.
I think it's just kind of that awareness that, like I have to, if I want to continue to be as healthy as I am, like I have to do things even when they're hard.
What do you prefer to do if the world was normal? Would you be going to like spin class or something like
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, I like the class aspect. Like it just kind of, it's like social, but then like also keeps you accountable, and it's a,
Yeah.
it's a bit of an extra push versus trying to do it myself, right? Like it's, there's those days where you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna do this, but it's not gonna be anything
Yeah.
spectacular.
Yeah, no, I'm the exact same way with working out. Do you guys have Orange Theory in Canada?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, I love Orange Theory. That's like my favorite.
yeah, yeah, yes, yeah. That I just sort of got back into as
Yeah.
they're trying to open up, but yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Well, so how soon after you were diagnosed, did you get into the advocacy work? And then what led to the documentary being made? And tell us about that.
So it was honestly pretty much instant. Like as soon as I could start training for the bike tour, I I did, like, and so that would have been probably around March that I sort of made that decision and signed up, and the bike tour's in June. So with that, when I thought about trying to raise money for riding, I was like, oh, like I've done a few fundraisers in the past, and there's the usual suspects that you can ask, right? Like parents, friends,
Yep.
and some coworkers, and old, like for me it was like university and high school still, right? And so and then I kind of was like, you know what? I'm just gonna explain to people why I am doing this, because it was scary and it's important. And it's, as much as I didn't want to tell people, because then it became a bit more real that this was what was happening. I just kind of was like, you know what? I think if people can kind of connect to this and understand why this is important, they might be more willing to support. And it kind of just exploded. Like I thought I would raise $1,000, and in I think 3 days I raised that, and then I just was like, you know what, I'm gonna set this lofty goal of $10,000 because I already filled out the forms that said 1,000. So I'm like, I'll just add a zero, and then I don't have to redo these. And if I hit 10,000, I do, and if I don't, like, who's gonna be upset, right? Like,
Yeah, you did your best.
and yeah, and so then I ended up raising, I think, just shy of $13,000 that first year. And the MS Society staff were sort of like, well, who is this, right? And as I got more opportunities to be involved just as they thought of them, and it wasn't anything that I was ever really looking at doing. I'm not really. I always laughed because everyone's like, "Oh, you're so comfortable and speaking and all these things," and it was like, well, it's I don't know if it's necessarily that. It's just over the years, just getting the opportunities, and then making like seeing the effect that actually doing these things and speaking and sharing my story has had, just in terms of raising awareness, and then just again opening more opportunities to do that. It just became one of these, like, if I have an opportunity to have this voice and make a difference, then I feel like I just had to take it, because I was like, well, you know, was I don't think I ever would have thought that that would have been what I was doing. Like, I was just sort of interested in raising money and doing that. And then, yeah, like, it just, the more people that I met, and have, spent time with, and that have MS too, like, there's all different levels of people that are comfortable with sharing their story, and some that aren't, and some that are newly diagnosed, and some that have been diagnosed for years and years. And so, um it it just became this, like, there was a lot of people that were not comfortable with sharing their story, but so grateful that I was. And I think for me too, where I am just in life and everything, like, I feel safe to be able to do it as well. So that's a big part of it. And so a lot of my driving force is doing that for people that aren't in that place yet.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, did the MS Society, are they the ones that made that film?
No, so it's funny. Um, the I was involved. I've been involved in a few other things than just MS Society. I do some fundraising for the food bank, and anytime anyone's like, oh, children, whether it's cancer, or
Yeah.
the children's hospital, or even children as victims of crime, right? Like, is a no brainer for me. I'm like, you know what? Like, either if I can't donate money, I can donate time. And
Hmm.
so, there was a few fundraisers that we had a little superhero girl in Edmonton, where her wish was to be essentially Spider-Man, but she was Spider Mabel. I don't know if you ever saw that. I know it went
I didn't, but I'll
viral.
look it up.
Yeah, and so I just sort of got involved with her and her family over the years, and she would come to some of my fundraisers that I was doing, and I would try and help her with some of hers. And so, for whatever reason, the people making the movie about her, wanted to film some of me, and they had to have a little bit about me, so that I didn't just show up in this movie
Hmm.
with no context. And so,
Yeah.
as they were filming that, there was an opportunity to apply for some funding. And they were like, oh, well, like, we have some of this footage of you, and maybe we can put together a pitch video and do this. And it was like, I think, like, some of the vote, I think there was 30, and 15 of them were voted in, and 15 of them were selected. Like, I can't remember this now. But half of them were voted in, and half of them were kind of selected by this panel. And so I kind of was like, at first I was like, no, this is ridiculous. Like, there's no one's gonna want to watch a documentary about me. And then they put the pitch video together, and they sent it to me, and I even I was like, oh my god, what happens next?
You're like, these film people are really good at what they
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Like, but then I'm still like, oh, whatever. Like, this isn't, like, this is a long shot. Like, no one's gonna want to vote for this. And so I just kept kind of agreeing to it, because I was like, this isn't gonna happen. And then it ended up happening, and I was like, well, crap.
That's really
So,
cool. And that was last summer.
yeah, yeah. Well, last
And
summer is when it came out. So we are working on it for about a couple months, like almost a year before that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And so has that been shown at like conferences and all kinds of events and things?
It's been interesting. Like we had few screenings here, but like it's online, right? So it's a little bit difficult to try and like make people pay to come watch something they can watch on YouTube. But yeah, we had a screening, and then but the great thing is like even for me, sometimes I will use that and show it to people, and then instead of just like talking, it's sort of like here's a great summary of everything, and then you can ask me some questions. Or but I think the biggest impact has just been it being shared um, throughout the MS community, and
Mhm.
for people um, who are newly diagnosed, people suggesting it to them, and things like that. Like I feel like I've had a huge impact that way, and a lot of it has been not necessarily even the documentary itself, but the amount of people reaching out, just with questions or for someone to talk to and for support. And I think that's been a big part of what I try and focus on as well, is just sort of being that person there that people can talk to. And just
Mhm.
I think the biggest thing is just sort of like I think that what I hope is the documentary comes across as what I wish I would have known right after I was diagnosed. Because
Mm.
a lot of it is, like a lot of people when they get diagnosed, it's like, is this a death sentence? Like, again, what
Right.
now? What's next? What does this mean for me? And so I think just even empowering people to realize that there is a future with MS. It might
Mhm.
not be the easiest one. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that, but it's your life's definitely not over. And I think that's the big thing to when you have that. I know for me, there was a few people when I was first diagnosed that I either met or I kind of heard about, that were sort of my um, inspiration, or like
Mhm.
um, picture of how I wanted to live with MS,
Like
right? Like,
mentor
yeah,
type of
yeah.
people. Yeah.
And so I think the big thing for me is just being able to be that for other people, because I know I had that, and I don't know if I would have been on the same path without them. So yeah, that was a big part of it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I know that the ultimate goal is to find a cure for MS, and we are, hoping for that, as are so many other people. How do you feel about where things stand with research and medication and all of those things right now?
Honestly, it's so fascinating, because like even when I was diagnosed in 2012, your only choices were injectables.
Mm.
So even since 2012, I think the amount of medications have almost tripled, I'd say, for options. There's pills, there's less frequent injections, there is infusions, so a lot less invasive, many more options, just even little things you can do, like studies around vitamin D and everything that's coming out. Like it is honestly mind-blowing, like how many people have these different ideas that they're pursuing, and information that they're finding out. Like even I'm just thinking about like some of the ones that are looking at drugs that already exist, that are showing that they can and have some effect. Like I think it was the acne medication that then would work on MS. And so there's so many people, and I've been so honored and blessed to know so many of them over the years, and even like be involved for 2 years. I sat on a panel that uh, selected the research that the MS Society funds, and so I got to see a lot of the proposals coming through and give my opinion as not any sort of expert, but as someone that's living with MS. Because like there's a lot of things that are coming out that are great science, but I think there needs to be that balance between living currently with MS and trying to make that more manageable, versus trying to cure and prevent. And so there's
Hmm.
so many different aspects to the research and the medications that are out there. And I think it's just fascinating to see all of the different ways that they're sort of attacking this.
Yeah, it's really incredible how far things have come in such a short period of time. Because I keep hearing that over and over from people like, oh, just 5 years ago it wasn't like this, and now there's so many more options. And here we are looking forward. Who knows, what the next 5 or 10 years hold. So that's really encouraging to hear that. Okay, so the last question I want to ask you is just if you're speaking to someone that maybe they did just get a new diagnosis this week or last week or recently, what would be your advice to them at this time?
Like I said earlier, your life is definitely not over. A big thing I wish I kind of would have looked at is having someone to speak to. So like the therapist or someone
Mhm.
like that, because I know for me it was almost that like I just wanted to be positive, and I just didn't want to let anything negative come in, and I think that was more harmful than anything, because a lot of MS, like it being just so unpredictable, and so day by day, things can change. What
Mhm.
I've really learned is trying, and I'm still still working on this, but just trying to allow myself to feel what I'm feeling. So
Mm.
if you're diagnosed and you're scared, be scared. You're allowed to feel scared, but do something about it, right? Like research and talk to someone. And it's the same thing. If you're mad, you're 100% allowed to be mad, because some days it just doesn't feel fair, and there's no explanation for why people have MS right now. And so, but again, it's just trying not to get stuck in these feelings. It's allowing yourself to feel these feelings, and then trying to do something to help manage those feelings. Whether it's seeing someone, a professional, to be able to speak to, whether it's exercise, whether it's volunteering. There's so many different ways to manage all of the different things that come with an MS diagnosis, because as much as it's some of the physical symptoms, there are the emotional and the mental, and
Mhm.
and sometimes it's everything from like trying to figure out what, like for me, I had a plan of what my career goals were, and I had to be flexible with that and reevaluate, and so a lot of it is that as well, is just trying to be flexible, and just, I don't know. For me, what I've really tried to do is I can't change what's going on, so I'm just going to try and make the best of it.
Yeah. Yeah. We were just talking to a psychologist yesterday, actually, about the mental health side of things. And she was basically saying, what, this comes with a, mental health negative,
Yeah.
basically. And so she was saying some similar things about how to combat that. And I think that is so important. And we are always pushing that out. Patrycia, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your story and your voice and all that you're doing for the community. And I'm going to be sure to link up all of your stuff in the text when we get off of here. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the opportunity.